Hello and welcome back to my channel, where if it's Sunday, it's going to be simple. So oddly enough, these cards start out with card bases. I went to cut some card bases, and so I'm cutting down some 8.5 by 11 down the middle the long way, and I suddenly realized, oh, I got a whole bunch of that sitting in the craft room already cut. So I make some card bases, and what I'm doing today is making 5 cards from the February Cardmaker's kit from Echo Park. Now this kit didn't actually get to me until, I don't know, the second or third week of February. The kit contains everything you need to make a few cards, except for the bases. So it comes with an instruction sheet. It's like a little postcard. It has a few pictures on it and shows you how to make the card that's on the back of it, which is there. Super cute. But I didn't do that, of course. And then it has the ephemera pack. This ephemera pack has a large variety of different sizes. It has some small banners and a tag and some sentiments. Here is the stamp set that came with the kit. It says that this stamp set is an exclusive. I think it takes elements from the 2 sets of retail stamps from this kit and puts just a few of the elements from each of those sets together. And of course we have the 6x6 paper pad. If I didn't say it before, this is the birthday Salutations line from Echo Park. So I just went ahead and flipped through to show some of these little sentiments. Of course, it matches everything else that's in the kit. And there are plenty of cut-aparts in this. I think every single page was cut-aparts on one side and a plain sheet on the back. Or not plain, but a designer paper on the back. You see there's a few different strips and some to and from tags, a couple frames that you can stamp in, a lot of really fun stuff. In addition to the card bases, I also grabbed some plain cardstock from my craft room. I used a sheet of pink, a sheet of red, and then this sheet that's pretty much like an orange mustard color. It is a little bit darker than what you see in the paper pad, but a couple of the ephemera had really closely matching colors, so I thought that this would be a good use for this color paper. I went ahead and cut down some of this cardstock to use as card fronts, so 5 1/4 by 4 inches. I went ahead and pulled out 4 or 5 sheets of the 6x6, the ones that had my favorite sentiments on them. And when I do a card build like this, I like to cut down some of the sentiments and some of the smaller pieces. That way, when I have a bunch of stuff laid out on the table, I'm not trying to figure out, am I using the front of this one? Am I using the back of this one? So not only do I cut out some of these cut aparts, I put some of my favorite ones in one pile, so I know those ones I'm going to use first. And then I took out some of my favorite pieces of the backside and cut those down to the size of the card front. So 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then I set aside those other strips, assuming that I can use those on the card fronts as well. I really like to use a tray to keep myself organized here. So you see I have the card fronts in the back there, and then some sentiments, some of the longer strips, the colored cardstock, and then some of the other things that I cut apart that I'm not sure what I'm going to do with yet. And then I take those tiny strips just in case I want to build a card base out of them or a card front by layering them up together. For my first card, I take this sentiment and I want to make it a little larger. So I take some of the coordinating cardstock and first I measure the size of my cut apart, and then I cut some paper down just a little bit larger so that I can give it some layering and make it a little wider. So I get this cut apart glued down to these two strips of paper, and I tried to even them up so that they have the same amount of frame around the top and bottom, but I want them to be kind of seamless. So I really kind of jam them together so that from the front you don't see the seam and it just looks like one piece of cardstock that's two different colors. Now I know this is a lot of steps for a simple card, but really I'm just cutting out paper and gluing it onto other paper and making some cards. It's not a lot of fuss, there's not a lot of fussy cutting, there are not a lot of layers or embellishments, just pretty simple. And that's what Simple Sundays is all about. So here I have the sentiment, and I kind of tilted it to one side just to, I don't know, make it asymmetrical. On to card number 2, where I use this balloon cut apart and a piece of red cardstock to offset it in a frame. See, I'm going for a sideways thing here, but then I realized that the sentiment is perfect for a card that is in this orientation. And I take this little strip and put it on just a tiny piece of foam, well, like a giant tiny piece of foam, and lift that up just a little bit to give it some interest. And that is that. 2 done. For my next trick, I get out a circle punch and punch a piece of the designer cardstock. This one is just barely larger than the piece of ephemera. I just really wanted it to create a frame that could differentiate between the sentiment and the busy piece of cardstock behind it. So initially I thought I was just going to do a single blue ribbon with the banners that were in the ephemera pack, but then I realized that I needed a little bit more, so I went a little crazy with my circle punches like I do, and I just started layering things up. I went back into the ephemera pile, and you'll see that there's this tiny little round cupcake with a candle on it. So I think that's about 3/4 of an inch. I went ahead and grabbed my 1-inch circle punch to make a backing for that. And then I just layered them up in the different colors. And I thought that using these colors in this way really calmed down what looked super busy at first. It's weird how adding more layers in this case makes it look less busy, but it definitely covered up some of that, the image on the back, and helped the sentiment pop out just a little more. So my flip through comes a little early. This was just one of the ephemera on top of a card base and a card front. And for this one, I used 2 different corner rounders to create these frames for each of the sentiments. But then once I was gluing them down, decided that it would be pretty cool if they were offset just a little bit. And then there is that one. So those are my first 5 cards from this kit, but I'm going to bring you 5 more. So keep an eye out for that video. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you can catch it. I've got everything back in my tray and organized for the next time I film. Thank you so much for joining me for a Simple Sunday video, and don't forget, safety first.